last video, we talked about color theory. And what I want to talk about in this video, I want to demonstrate some practical applications of it. How do you apply what we covered in the last video? So what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to make shadows and darks that sing with color rather than being a flat black. There is a well-known color pencil teacher, artist, who uses black for all his shadows. And if you look at his instruction books in particular where he's using the black, they're dead. They're just completely dead. We're going to use color to create colorful shadows and colorful darks. One of the first things I'm going to start with is shadows. So let's pretend we're making an apple here. And these are going to be rough demonstrations. They're not trying to produce art here, so I'm not going to worry about what shape my apple is. It's just going to be a red, somewhat circular object. So let's do that. Okay. Now, for those of you who are curious, that's done with a Color Soft red, number C120. That's a Color Soft by Derwent. Now, the shadow, typically, what you can use is you can use the complement to create the body shadow, because the complement of the red is green, and green and red end up combining all three colors, which produces a black or a gray or a brown tone, depending on the purity of the colors and how accurately you're choosing the complement. But you can see how that, I hope, that tones down the area. Okay. You can use it in the cast shadow as well, but it can't be the only color in there, because it just doesn't look quite right. That said, this is part of what the Impressionists did that caused them so much grief in the beginning and so much popularity later on, is because the complements are in shadows. If you look closely at your shadows, you will see that. So there I've put down a green, and you can see it does read somewhat like a shadow. To actually make it a shadow color, a more realistic shadow, I'm actually going to use some blue in there as well. That would be typical of a reflection of the sky. If you ever noticed a snow-covered field, the shadows on from the trees are actually a sky blue. You'll see that particularly in photographs. It stands out particularly well. So the blue sort of neutralizes the green and again makes it more believable. You can use some blue in the body as well, in the body shadow. And that just grays everything down very nicely. Whoops, and typically I would use some red in there as well. And there you have a fairly natural looking shadow. Let me zoom in on that and see if we can get it a little tighter. Okay, now let's try orange. I'm using number 10 on the Derwent Studio pencils, same number in the artist. It's a orange chrome is the color name. Any orange will do. You could even make it using your red and your yellows if you wish. So the complement on the orange is a blue. So you can use the blue. And you'll have to layer it a couple of times. This isn't quite the exact complement of this orange, but it's close. Okay, so you can see it's a fairly bright blue. And again, this is just a very rough representation, not meant to be artistic at all. Okay, so you can see that sort of has a shadow on it. And now I would then use some orange down in this blue, and you can see how it darkens it down and makes it quite neutral. The thing you need to be careful of, and in my experience, it's somewhat limited with watercolors, but this the using complements to create the shadow areas, you need to be careful because in watercolors it tends to create fairly muddy colors if your complements are too far off being exact complements. Next, you might have a lemon or something yellow. So here I'm using a polychromos cadmium yellow. Sorry, cadmium yellow. So again, I'm just going to put in a somewhat circular shape. The complement here is a violet, and I didn't grab a violet pencil, did I? So let's see if I can grab a violet right now. Well, I have a pencil here called Imperial Purple. It's a Derwent Artist number 2300. That's going to be fairly close. And when I throw it onto the body, it tones it down. This actually becomes a little almost brownish. So it's a pretty close complement. See if I can zoom in on those for you a little bit before I do anything more. Okay, so you can see those are quite natural looking shadows. And just for a quick comparison here, I'm going to put a yellow on here. And if I were to use black, it's just dead. There's no life to this. There's nothing there. It's horrible. Now I'm going to show you something else. Zoom back out a little bit, a little more working room. The colors that I normally use, having shown you this, I'm going to show you what I normally use. I use a variation on this. So there's my red apple, let's say. Could be a cherry, anything red. The colors I normally use are, there are 3 of them. And they're quite dark, but they work really well. Indigo, which is again, Derwent Studio, Indigo number 36. Derwent Studio Burnt Umber number 54. And I use Prismacolor number 937, which is Tuscan Red. And those are the three dark versions of basically primary colors that I use to create shadow areas. Okay, so the indigo, of course, is a dark blue. Blue jeans are indigo. And that will create a nice dark shadow fairly quickly. You can use the Tuscan Red on top, and it really works well because it goes black, or not black, but dark really fast. Okay. And it can make, you can see how dark this red is. So there's my shadow. If I throw some indigo into that, you can see how dark that goes. But the interesting thing is that there's still some life in this. There's color there. You can see the reds and the blues coming through, but it reads as a dark. And if I really need to darken it down, then I throw the burnt umber on top of it. And burnt umber, of course, is just a dark brown. Neutralizes it out. You've got some red. Now, if I were actually doing a painting that had red apples and whatnot in it, I would then throw in some green into that mix. It's going to darken it a little bit more, but it's going to give it some of the complement, which you will see in shadow. If you look at trees, cedar trees especially, cedar hedges, there's lots of red in the shadow areas, the undertones in them. And if you add that into your paintings, you will add that life, that sense of light to them. Let me just show you something else here. If I use my dark brown, the burnt umber, number 54, and I lay down an area, of the brown. Over that, over part of it, I will lay an area of indigo. Now the burnt umber is basically a very dark brown or orange. So with the blues and the orange, you get a strong gray. Okay. Over that, I'm going to lay a section of the Tuscan Red. Okay, now over the area where all three overlap, I'm just going to put down another layer of each, just in that one area, so that you can see how that goes. Very, very dark, very easily, but still has life to it. And if it shows up well on the video here, what you will notice is that whatever color's on top is going to be a little more prominent than the colors that are underneath. So if you need a warm dark, you're going to use the reds on top, and if you want a cooler dark, you're going to use the blues on top. And just for comparison, I'm going to put an area of black underneath that. And you can see there's just no life to the black. Let me zoom in a little on that for you. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it useful and perhaps learned something from it. If you did, a like and subscribe would be thoroughly appreciated. In my next video, I'm going to do a complete drawing, start to finish, of a winter sunset. Following that, I'm going to do a little bit more on color theory. We're going to look at using warm and cool colors to add to the three-dimensionality of your paintings. After that, I'm going to take a look at equipment. What equipment should you be using? What equipment do you need to get started? And what would be nice to have? So get your shopping lists ready. Look forward to seeing you.